Young Dolph's fiancée reportedly stepped into a massive financial legacy after his passing, with his estate often estimated to be worth around $20 million. And what happened next is seriously eye-opening. After Dolph lost his life in Memphis in November 2021, Mia J was left dealing with something much bigger than money: a valuable music catalog, an independent label, real estate holdings, 2 children to care for, and a public legacy with millions of eyes watching every move. The wealth was significant, but so was the pressure. What Mia did afterward opened up a much bigger conversation about ownership, loss, family, and building generational wealth. And once you look past the flashy headlines, there are details here that many people completely overlooked. Today, we're breaking down what Young Dolph built, what became part of the legacy surrounding Mia J and his family, and how one of Memphis's biggest independent hip-hop success stories continued after his passing. Before getting into the numbers, though, you have to understand who Young Dolph really was and why his financial setup was different from the typical rapper story. Adolph Robert Thornton Jr. was born July 27, 1985 in Chicago, Illinois. But Memphis, Tennessee became the city tied to nearly every chapter of his rise. South Memphis was where Dolph grew up, built his name, developed his business moves, supported his community, and eventually lost his life. He released his first mixtape, Paper Route Campaign, in 2008. Over the next 13 years, Dolph stayed on serious grind mode, releasing 22 projects across mixtapes, albums, and compilations, moving at a pace that even plenty of major label artists would struggle to match. What made Dolph's hustle stand out was that he wasn't only making music, he was quietly building an entire business machine behind it. While plenty of artists chased radio spins, chart attention, and major label approval, Dolph kept his eyes on infrastructure and long-term control. He understood something many artists discover much later. In the music industry, talent can open the door, but ownership can determine who keeps the biggest piece of what they build. And Dolph clearly wanted his piece. From early in his career, he focused on what he could control, what he could keep, and what could continue growing beyond the next album. His 2016 debut studio album, King of Memphis, reached number 49 on the Billboard 200 and number 8 on the top R&B and hip-hop albums chart. But chart numbers were only part of the play. Behind the scenes, Dolph was putting together something that could potentially become far more valuable over time: ownership. Instead of depending entirely on outside companies to shape his career, he was creating a setup where he could have more control over the music, business decisions, and future opportunities connected to his name. That's where Paper Route Empire, better known as PRE, becomes a major part of the story. PRE wasn't simply a label with Dolph's name stamped across it. Dolph co-founded the company with his business partner, Daddy-O, in 2010, using it as the home for his music, while also helping develop artists including Key Glock, Big Moochie Grape, Jay Fizzle, and Kenny Mooney. The whole setup was built around one powerful idea: control. Control over his sound, his masters, his business moves, his future, and ultimately the assets that could become part of the legacy he left behind. Key Glock is especially important to this story because his connection with Dolph went beyond PRE. He is Dolph's cousin and became one of the most commercially successful independent names connected to Memphis rap. The connection between Dolph and Key Glock was personal and professional at the same time, and that loyalty became a major part of PRE's foundation. Having family and trusted artists connected to the label helped Paper Route Empire stay active and culturally relevant even after Dolph's passing. But Dolph wasn't putting all his chips on music alone. Reports have also linked him to a niche coffee roasting business whose products were stocked in local Kroger stores around Memphis. That move showed another side of his strategy. He was expanding his business footprint beyond music and real estate, instead of depending on one big payday. The logic was pretty street smart. Multiple income streams can create more stability than relying on one big payday. If music revenue had a slower year, other investments and properties could potentially keep generating income. Dolph was building different income lanes around himself, making sure his entire setup wasn't dependent on one source. And this is where things get seriously interesting. During PRE's rise, Dolph said he received major label offers involving huge amounts of money, including one reportedly worth around $22 million. On paper, that kind of number could completely change a family's financial future. Plenty of artists might have seen the dollar signs, signed immediately, and worried about the fine print afterwards. Dolph chose a different route. He believed accepting a massive upfront deal could mean giving up valuable control over what he had spent years building: the music, the masters, the brand, and the long-term business potential. Instead of chasing the biggest check sitting in front of him, he was betting on ownership and independence. Looking back, that decision became an even bigger part of the story surrounding the business legacy Dolph worked to create. Because after Dolph's passing, key assets connected to his career, including his catalog, label interests, and intellectual property, could remain tied to his estate instead of automatically sitting under the control of a major music corporation. In simple terms, his family still had a stake in the machine he spent years building, and that machine had the potential to keep generating revenue. Here's why master recordings matter so much when talking about Dolph's estate. A master is essentially the original recorded version of a song. Depending on the specific ownership and contract terms, whoever controls those rights can earn revenue when the music is streamed, sold digitally, licensed for movies, television, advertising, sampling, and other commercial uses. That's where independence can become a serious power move. In many traditional record deals, labels can own or control an artist's masters under the terms of the contract. Independent artists may have opportunities to retain more ownership, which can give them a larger stake in the long-term value of their music. Dolph repeatedly made ownership and independence central to his business strategy, meaning the rights connected to his catalog became an important part of the financial legacy surrounding his estate. And the numbers after his passing were eye-opening. In November 2021, reports indicated that streams of Dolph's music jumped dramatically, with Spotify activity reportedly rising around 250%. That sudden attention showed exactly why an established catalog can carry major long-term value. With an enormous number of cumulative plays across streaming platforms, Dolph's catalog can continue producing revenue years after the music was originally released. Estimates of exactly how much it generates vary, but the bigger point remains. Dolph built music assets with lasting commercial value, and those assets became an important piece of the estate and legacy he left behind. That's what Dolph's ownership strategy was really about, and those assets became part of the larger legacy connected to his family and estate. But the music rights were only one piece of the puzzle. Behind the scenes, Dolph was reportedly making another major money move in Memphis, buying real estate. Instead of putting every dollar into flashy purchases, reports say Dolph acquired foreclosed and distressed properties across Memphis neighborhoods, gradually building a sizable portfolio. Some reports even describe a birthday tradition where he would put properties in his children's names, turning a celebration into something that could potentially build long-term value instead of disappearing after one expensive day. Now, this is where keeping the facts straight matters. Different reports have given different numbers for the size of Dolph's property portfolio, with some claims putting it at more than 100 properties. That exact figure is difficult to independently verify, so it's safer not to treat it as confirmed. What is clear from multiple reports is that real estate played a meaningful role in the wealth-building strategy associated with Dolph. And think about what kinds of assets can mean for a family. Rental properties can potentially produce ongoing income, property values can rise over time, and the assets themselves can be maintained, managed, transferred, or eventually sold. Unlike many expensive luxury purchases that can quickly lose value, carefully selected real estate can potentially remain valuable for decades. Dolph wasn't just making money from rap and immediately blowing through the checks. His strategy was to turn some of that music income into assets with the potential to last beyond his career. And then came the cars. Dolph was well known for his eye-catching vehicle collection, especially those military camouflage-wrapped Rolls-Royces that became a signature part of his image. The Rolls-Royce Wraith, the Cullinan, the Phantom, these weren't everyday cars, and they definitely didn't come with everyday price tags. For Dolph, the collection became a visible symbol of independence and success after building his name from the ground up in South Memphis. But after his passing, reports suggest Mia made a major financial decision involving some of those vehicles, and it gives us a glimpse into how the estate may have been managed. According to various reports, parts of Dolph's luxury vehicle collection were reportedly sold, with some accounts placing the combined value at around $2.3 million. That exact figure is difficult to independently confirm, but if accurate, it would represent a serious amount of money being shifted from luxury vehicles into more flexible financial assets. And here's where the business logic gets interesting. Luxury cars can carry huge price tags, but they can also come with insurance, storage, maintenance, security, and other ongoing expenses. Meanwhile, assets such as music rights or rental properties may have the potential to generate recurring revenue. A high-end car sitting in storage simply works differently from a song collecting streams or a property bringing in rent. So, selling vehicles doesn't automatically mean an estate is facing financial problems. Depending on the circumstances, it can be a calculated move to convert costly assets into cash that can be invested, saved, or placed into longer-term financial structures. Reports have claimed that proceeds connected to the vehicle sales were directed toward trust arrangements intended to protect the family's wealth. If those reports are accurate, the move looks less like a fire sale and more like strategic estate planning, shifting money toward assets and structures designed for the long game. Now, let's get into who Mia J actually is, because her story goes far beyond simply being Young Dolph's longtime partner. She had already built her own professional and entrepreneurial identity years before Dolph's passing placed even more public attention on her and the family's legacy. Mia is a businesswoman, real estate professional, author, and community advocate in her own right. She founded Mom EO, a lifestyle and empowerment brand centered on helping women grow as mothers, entrepreneurs, and leaders. She also entered the children's publishing space with books including No Way, Trey, You Can't Have Your Way, released in 2015, and developed Fresh Start Kids as another part of her business portfolio. Then there's Black Men Deserve to Grow Old, a cause with an especially personal meaning for Mia. She launched the movement after losing her brother in 2020, before Dolph's passing made its message even more deeply connected to her own life. Through her Mom.io platform, the initiative combines apparel with community advocacy, raising awareness about violence affecting Black men and encouraging safer communities and greater accountability. After Dolph's passing, the movement gained even more public attention. Mia appeared on Good Morning America and spoke about transforming personal pain into purpose, bringing national visibility to both her advocacy and the continuing legal process surrounding Dolph's case. Reporting in court proceedings have also included serious allegations that money was offered in connection with the attack on Dolph, though those claims should be presented as allegations unless established by the court. Mia has been very public about wanting every person legally responsible in Dolph's case to face the justice system and full accountability. Justin Johnson was convicted in 2024 in connection with Dolph's passing, while Cornelius Smith admitted his involvement and testified during the proceedings. Throughout the legal process, Mia remained visible and outspoken, not only as Dolph's longtime partner, but as someone pushing for every part of the case to be fully examined through the courts. But her public work goes far beyond the courtroom. Mia also uses her platform to discuss financial literacy, ownership, and building long-term stability for families. Drawing from her background in finance and real estate, she talks about developing an ownership mindset, changing difficult financial patterns across generations, and learning how to build assets instead of chasing appearances. And this is where Dolph's business strategy connects directly to her message. She has discussed the importance of concepts tied to long-term wealth, including music ownership, real estate, financial planning, and structures designed to protect family assets. Instead of keeping those ideas behind closed doors, she has turned parts of her experience into educational conversations for people who may never have been taught how wealth management actually works. because when people hear estimates of a $20 million or $30 million estate, they often picture a giant pile of cash sitting in one bank account, ready to spend, and that's not how it works. Estate value can include businesses, property, intellectual property, investments, vehicles, and other assets, with taxes, expenses, debts, and legal obligations potentially affecting the final numbers. That makes the reality much more complicated than some flashy headline about suddenly getting rich. Public speculation may focus on luxury and dramatic spending, but Mia's background in finance helps explain why the biggest story is really about managing complicated assets, protecting long-term value, and making careful moves around the legacy Dolph spent years building. Instead of immediately chasing the most expensive lifestyle possible, Mia's reported approach has centered on protecting the assets already connected to Dolph's legacy and helping preserve their long-term value. And that matters because estimates placing Dolph's estate somewhere around $20 million to $30 million don't mean there was simply that much cash sitting in one account. Those estimates can include several different types of assets: the PRE music catalog and master recordings, Memphis real estate, business interests connected to Paper Route Empire, luxury vehicles, jewelry, cash, and other holdings. Reports have also discussed estate planning arrangements involving Mia and Dolph's children, although the exact legal structure and distribution of private assets isn't fully available to the public. And here's the part flashy headlines can easily miss. Most of this wealth isn't instantly liquid. Music rights can generate royalties over time. Properties may produce rental income while also requiring maintenance, taxes, and management. A business has operating expenses, while an estate itself can face legal fees, accounting bills, administrative costs, and other financial obligations. So a huge estimated net worth doesn't automatically equal a huge stack of spendable cash. But there's another side to managing an estate that numbers can't explain: the personal weight behind every decision. Choosing what to keep, what to sell, and what to change can involve balancing financial responsibility with memories and family priorities. Selling one of Dolph's cars, for example, could make financial sense while still carrying serious emotional meaning. Managing his music catalog can also mean repeatedly dealing with recordings of his voice and the creative work that became such a major part of his life. In a situation like this, business and personal memories can sit side by side, making estate management far more complicated than simply looking at a dollar figure. The personal loss and the responsibility of protecting Dolph's legacy are tied together at every turn. Managing an estate estimated around $20 million is nothing like simply receiving a $20 million check. It's closer to taking responsibility for a complicated business operation with different income streams, expenses, legal obligations, and major decisions that could affect the family for years. Think about everything that has to be handled. Who oversees PRE? Who negotiates licensing opportunities? Who manages and maintains the properties? Who decides whether previously unreleased music should come out? And who approves requests from artists, movies, commercials, or other projects that want to sample or license Dolph's music? Every move can carry financial and personal consequences, which means somebody has to carefully manage the details. At the same time, Mia had to deal with all of this while processing a very public loss. Dolph passed away just days before Thanksgiving in 2021, during a period when he was once again connected to community giving in Memphis. He had become known for annual turkey giveaways through Memphis Athletic Ministries and for supporting local organizations and schools. He also donated $25,000 to Hamilton High School to help provide equipment and supplies. So the legacy wasn't only about music, property, or dollar signs. There was also a community reputation attached to Dolph's name, and preserving that carries another level of responsibility. Mia's reported approach points towards stewardship rather than simply spending what was left behind. And there's a major difference between those two mindsets. Spending asks, what can I buy? Stewardship asks a much bigger question. How can these assets be protected, managed and potentially grown so they can keep supporting the family and the legacy for years to come. Stewardship asks a completely different question. What can I preserve and what can I grow? And the decisions reported around Dolph's legacy, from selling certain vehicles to maintaining the catalog, managing real estate, and continuing community advocacy, suggest a long-term mindset rather than a quick spending mentality. Paper Route Empire has also continued operating since Dolph's passing, with Daddy-O and other key people connected to the company helping keep the operation moving. Key Glock has remained one of PRE's most visible and commercially active artists, keeping that Paper Route name in the conversation while building his own lane. The label also continued releasing music connected to Dolph's legacy. Paper Route Empire Presents Long Live Young Dolph arrived as a tribute project, while Dolph's posthumous solo album Paper Route Frank was released in December 2022, and the numbers showed that listeners were still locked in. Paper Route Frank reached number 20 on the Billboard 200 and number 2 on the top R&B/hip-hop albums chart. Meanwhile, Dolph's catalog continues reaching listeners through streaming platforms, social media clips, recommendations, and artists from his circle who continue referencing his influence. Someone might discover Rich Slave, high-class street music, or gelato years after the original release and suddenly start digging through his entire catalog. Depending on the ownership and royalty arrangements involved, that continued listening can create ongoing value for the rights holders connected to his music and estate. And that brings the story right back to Dolph's obsession with independence. He publicly discussed turning down major label opportunities, purportedly worth enormous amounts, because he believed long-term control could be more valuable than one massive upfront payment. That was the gamble. Instead of simply looking at the biggest number being offered today, Dolph focused on what his music, brand, and business could potentially be worth tomorrow. Traditional label agreements can involve companies receiving portions of revenue or controlling certain rights depending on the contract. Dolph's strategy was built around keeping as much control as possible, and years later, that ownership-first mindset remains one of the biggest talking points surrounding the empire he created. By walking away from certain major label opportunities, PRE positioned itself to keep a larger stake in important revenue streams, and today, depending on the specific rights and agreements involved, portions of that value can continue benefiting his estate. And if you've never really understood why sync licensing is such a big deal, this part is worth knowing. When a Young Dolph song is approved for use in a movie, television series, commercial, video game, or another production, the owners and rights holders involved can receive licensing payments. The exact amount varies dramatically depending on the song, project, usage, territory, and contract. A smaller placement might bring in a modest payment, while a major advertising campaign or high-profile production can potentially command a much larger fee. And Dolph's catalog has something that could make it especially attractive for those opportunities. His music has a recognizable Memphis sound, a strong cultural identity, and a growing connection to a specific era of independent Southern hip-hop. As the years pass and listeners continue looking back at that period, songs from his catalog could potentially find new audiences through films, documentaries, television, games, and advertising. Every future placement can create another revenue opportunity for whoever controls the applicable rights. That means recordings Dolph created between 2008 and 2021 can potentially continue producing financial value years after their original release. That's the wild part about assets like music and real estate. A rental property can potentially generate income month after month, while a music catalog can earn through streams, licensing, sales, and other uses. Together, those asset classes can form a powerful part of a diversified estate. And this is where Dolph's independence-first philosophy really starts hitting different. The bigger story isn't simply what those assets may be worth today, it's how ownership can potentially allow their value to keep building over the long run, making the estate Mia and the family are connected to much more than a one-time payday. If Dolph had accepted that reported $22 million major label offer, the financial picture surrounding his catalog today could look very different. Depending on the terms of a traditional record deal, a label might have gained significant rights or control over certain recordings, while Dolph and his estate could have received a different share of future streaming and licensing revenue. By choosing independence, Dolph positioned himself to retain more control over valuable intellectual property. That means music from projects like Rich Slave, his 2020 studio album, King of Memphis, and the many mixtapes across his catalog can continue finding new listeners through streaming, sampling, licensing, social media, and future media placements. Depending on the specific ownership arrangements, that activity can continue creating value for the rights holders connected to his estate. And here's the part people sometimes overlook. The value of a music catalog isn't necessarily frozen at one number. A song can suddenly find a new audience years later through a movie, viral clip, popular sample, or streaming recommendation. That gives a strong catalog the potential to keep producing opportunities long after its original release. Then there are Dolph's children, Trey and Aria, who are at the heart of the long-term family legacy. Reports have discussed property, trusts, and other financial structures intended to protect assets for the family over time. Music rights could also potentially provide value well into their adult lives. Dolph regularly spoke about ownership as something bigger than personal success. It was about creating something that could last across generations. Mia's role in protecting that vision has largely appeared focused on managing the assets and preserving the legacy rather than turning the estate into a flashy public spectacle. Instead of constantly showcasing expensive purchases, the bigger focus appears to be keeping what Dolph built organized, protected, and positioned for the future. What the public usually sees from Mia is fashion appearances, advocacy work, business moves, parenting content, and a carefully managed public presence. What people rarely see is the behind-the-scenes work that may come with overseeing properties, music rights, and business interests connected to Dolph's legacy. Attorney meetings, royalty statements, property decisions, accounting, tax planning, and negotiations aren't exactly social media content, but that's where some of the most important work can happen. And that's what makes her situation more intense than the flashy headlines might suggest. The surprising part isn't necessarily private jets, designer shopping trips, or non-stop luxury. Clearly, Mia enjoys success, but the bigger story is the level of responsibility involved in managing complicated family assets while also raising children, running her own businesses, continuing advocacy work, and staying involved with the legal process surrounding Dolph's case. But when you look at the long game, the biggest focus comes back to Trey and Aria. Dolph openly connected his ownership mindset to being a father. He spoke about creating assets his children could benefit from later, and reports have described him putting properties in their names as part of that bigger wealth-building vision. He wasn't only thinking about what he could enjoy in the moment, he was thinking years ahead about what could still be there when his children became adults and started making their own financial decisions. That goal became even more important after his passing. And because the children are still growing up, choices made around the estate today could have effects stretching decades into the future. A well-managed property portfolio can potentially appreciate, while an established music catalog can continue finding new audiences and creating licensing opportunities. A catalog managed carefully in 2026 could potentially carry significantly different value in 2036 or 2046, especially if Dolph's music continues connecting with future generations. Real estate purchased years ago in Memphis neighborhoods could potentially be worth far more by the time Dolph's children are old enough to make their own major financial decisions. That's what generational wealth can look like in the real world. Not one giant check changing hands overnight, but years of protecting, managing, and growing assets until a family reaches a completely different financial position from where the story began. Dolph clearly understood that bigger picture, and Mia's reported approach appears focused on preserving that vision. Now look at the timeline, because when you put the pieces together, the strategy becomes even clearer. Dolph rises out of South Memphis and helps build Paper Route Empire independently beginning in 2010. He publicly discusses turning down a major label offer reportedly worth $22 million. He invests in Memphis real estate, builds an extensive music catalog, and makes ownership a central part of his business philosophy. He reportedly puts property in his children's names. He and Mia are planning their future together, and he talks about eventually slowing down to spend more time with family. Then, on November 17, 2021, Dolph suddenly passes away, changing everything. Mia is left facing the enormous responsibility of helping protect the family and navigate the financial legacy he built. Interest in Dolph's music surged immediately afterwards, with reports pointing to a roughly 250% jump in Spotify streams. His catalog continued generating revenue, while reports claimed sales of luxury vehicles converted approximately $2.3 million worth of high-cost assets into more flexible capital. Posthumous releases also kept Dolph's music and PRE in the public conversation. The legal case surrounding his passing reached major milestones in 2024, while Mia continued balancing her businesses, advocacy work, parenting, and Dolph's legacy. By 2026, the bigger financial story is about assets with the potential to keep producing value: music, property, business interests, and a strategy designed to play the long game.
The real estate can keep producing value, and the music can keep reaching new listeners. What Young Dolph spent much of his career showing was that ownership could sometimes be more valuable than fame alone. After his passing, that philosophy didn't simply disappear. It became part of the financial legacy Mia J. and the family were left to navigate. The luxury cars could be sold, jewelry could be converted into cash, headlines could eventually move on. But assets like property, music rights, and business interests have the potential to keep creating value long after the spotlight shifts somewhere else. That's what makes this story hit differently. So maybe the surprising part of Mia's life isn't simply that she became connected to an estate often estimated around $20 million. It's the responsibility of protecting complicated assets, making careful financial decisions, and trying to preserve what Dolph spent years building so his children and future generations can potentially benefit from it. Now, drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Mia J's reported approach to managing Dolph's legacy has been a smart one? And looking back at Dolph's decision to remain independent, do you think keeping greater control over his music and business became one of the most important financial moves of his career? Should more artists study the independent ownership model before automatically chasing a major label deal? Let us know what you think, and subscribe for more deep dives into the business and financial side of hip-hop that often gets overlooked.